First contact and confusion. High Admiral Vexthor stood motionless before the massive holographic display, his crystalline form refracting the light of countless stars. The planet before him, designation Sol 3, should have been an easy conquest. Instead, it had become the Coalition's greatest mystery. Another patrol lost, High Admiral, reported Commander Zara, her metallic scales clicking as she approached. Fifth one this week. No distress signal, no debris field, just gone. Vexthor's crystalline structure pulsed with a deep purple hue, a sign of intense frustration among his species. Impossible. Our scans show nothing but primitive fossil fuel technology, basic projectile weapons, and rudimentary space capabilities. They haven't even colonized their own moon. The bridge of the Coalition flagship Eternal Dawn hummed with nervous energy as various alien species went about their duties. Each represented the peak of their civilization's evolution: the crystalline minds of Rigel, the metallic scales of Dracos, the energy beings of Ta Ceti. Together, they formed the most advanced military force in the known galaxy. Yet somehow, they were being outmaneuvered by primates. "Show me the last known coordinates of the patrol," Vexthor commanded. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on a dense forest region in what the locals called Pacific Northwest. Commander Zara manipulated the controls with practiced precision. Sensor logs show they were performing standard reconnaissance. Everything was normal until she paused, double-checking the data. Until they weren't. Explain. There's no indication of energy weapons, no electromagnetic disturbance, no quantum disruption. One moment they were there, the next. She gestured at the display with a metallic claw. Nothing. Vexthor's crystalline body chimed softly as he processed this information. In 3,000 years of Coalition expansion, they'd never encountered anything like this. Their technology could detect the movement of individual atoms, track quantum fluctuations across light years, and predict solar flares before they occurred. Yet somehow, these humans were making their ships vanish without a trace. "What about the atmospheric analysis?" he asked. A holographic readout appeared, showing chemical compositions, temperature variations, and wind patterns. Everything appeared normal for a Class M planet. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Kree, an energy being whose form flickered with excitement, "I've been analyzing the planetary defense patterns, and I've noticed something unusual." "Proceed." "The humans appear to have no unified planetary defense system. No orbital platforms, no energy shields, no automated response networks. But the lieutenant's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. But they seem to have an intimate understanding of their planet's natural systems that exceeds anything in our database." Commander Zara's scales rippled with skepticism. "Are you suggesting they're using their planet itself as a weapon?" "Not exactly," Kree replied. "But look at this footage from one of our ground probes before it went dark." The holographic display shifted again, showing dense forest undergrowth. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, something moved. The footage froze and enhanced, but even with the Coalition's advanced imaging technology, all they could see was a vague outline that matched the surrounding vegetation perfectly. "That's it?" Zara asked. "Some local flora?" "No," Vexthor said slowly, his crystalline form dimming with realization. "That's them. The humans. They've found a way to become one with their environment." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Coalition's entire military doctrine was based on technological superiority. Their sensors were calibrated to detect energy signatures, artificial materials, and technological threats. But how do you fight an enemy that moves like the wind, blends like a shadow, and strikes without technology? "High Admiral," called out another officer, "we're detecting a transmission from the surface. Audio only, using primitive radio waves." "Let's hear it." A calm, almost amused human voice filled the bridge. "To the alien fleet in orbit. We've been watching you watching us. Might want to check on your ships in Sector 7 and 8 and 12. Have a nice day." Before Vexthor could respond, alerts began blaring across multiple stations. Patrol ships in 3 different sectors had gone dark simultaneously. "How?" Commander Zara demanded. "How are they doing this?" Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with a new color, one that hadn't been seen in his species for generations. It was the color of doubt. "We made a fundamental error," he said quietly. "We looked for civilization and saw primitive technology. We looked for weapons and saw basic tools. We looked for armies and saw scattered populations." His form brightened with intensity. "But we never looked for what they truly are. Masters of adaptation. Supreme predators who have learned to become invisible not through technology, but through perfect harmony with their world." "Your orders, High Admiral." Vexthor stared at the beautiful blue planet below, seeing it with new eyes. "Recall all patrols. Establish a wider orbital perimeter. And—" he paused, his crystalline structure resonating with a deep hum. "And send a message to Coalition High Command. Tell them we're not dealing with primitive beings who need to be conquered. We're dealing with something far more dangerous, a species that has mastered the art of invisibility without ever needing to invent it." As the orders were relayed, another transmission came from the surface, this time with video. It showed a dense forest, seemingly empty. Then, one by one, dozens of humans emerged from perfect camouflage, their forms materializing like ghosts from the landscape. They weren't wearing powered armor or wielding energy weapons. They were wrapped in simple materials that mimicked their environment, carrying projectile weapons that required no power signatures to detect. The message was clear. The Coalition's greatest strength, its advanced technology, had become its greatest weakness. They had built sensors to detect the impossible, while remaining blind to the simple. And on Earth, simplicity had become the deadliest weapon of all. High Admiral Vexthor watched the transmission end, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that spoke of both respect and fear. The conquest of Earth would have to wait. First, they needed to learn how to fight an enemy they couldn't see, and perhaps more importantly, understand a species that had achieved through evolution and adaptation what the Coalition had spent millennia trying to accomplish through technology. The game had changed, and for the first time in Coalition history, they weren't the ones making the rules. The Ghost Warriors. General Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the rainforest canopy, her ghillie suit blending seamlessly with the surrounding vegetation. Through her binoculars, she watched the alien ground force advancing through the valley below. Their sleek, metallic forms, a stark contrast to the lush green landscape. "Target confirmed," whispered Captain Rodriguez through the throat mic, his voice barely audible above the natural sounds of the forest. "Coalition Scout Party, 12 units, standard formation. They still haven't figured it out." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The aliens' reliance on their advanced technology had become their greatest vulnerability. Their sensors swept the area constantly, searching for energy signatures, heat patterns, and technological threats. But they remained blind to the 50 Special Forces operators who had surrounded them, moving as silently as the mist through the trees. "All units maintain position," she breathed into her mic. "Let's see what they're after this time." The alien squad moved with mechanical precision, their armor gleaming under the filtered sunlight. At their center, a tall crystalline being, obviously their commander, carried what appeared to be an advanced scanning device. They were learning, adapting their tactics, but still thinking like machines. Through her binoculars, Sarah could see the frustration in their movements. The crystalline commander's form pulsed with rapid color changes, its equivalent of human agitation. They'd been searching this sector for days, trying to understand how their patrols kept disappearing. "Ma'am," Rodriguez's voice came again. "They're approaching the ravine checkpoint. Permission to initiate contact protocol." Sarah checked her watch, an ancient analog model chosen specifically because it emitted no electronic signature. "Negative, Captain." Let them find what we left for them first. The alien squad reached a small clearing, and their scanner immediately began chirping excitedly. The crystalline commander rushed forward, its form blazing with triumphant colors. They had found exactly what Sarah's team wanted them to find: the remains of one of their own patrol vessels, apparently crashed and abandoned. What they couldn't detect were the dozens of hair-thin tripwires surrounding the site, each connected to nothing more technological than carefully balanced logs and rocks. Sometimes the oldest tricks were the best ones. "Now," Sarah whispered. The forest erupted into controlled chaos. The first tripwire triggered a cascade of falling timber that cut off the aliens' retreat. Before they could activate their energy shields, another barrage from the opposite direction forced them to scatter. Their formation broke exactly as planned. "Ghost teams, execute," Sarah commanded. From every direction, Special Forces operators emerged from their hiding spots, moving like shadows through the undergrowth. They didn't need to fire a single shot. The aliens' own panic did most of the work, trying to avoid the falling debris and unseen attackers. 3 of them stumbled into a perfectly natural-looking mud pit, actually a carefully prepared quicksand trap that immediately immobilized their advanced armor. The crystalline commander tried to rally his troops, but the psychological impact of being attacked by an enemy they couldn't detect was devastating. Their sensors showed nothing but forest life signs, yet they were being systematically trapped and isolated. Sarah keyed her mic again. Phase 2. The sound of wood cracking and leaves rustling filled the air as more operators revealed themselves, each emergence precisely timed to maximize the psychological impact. To the aliens, it must have looked like the forest itself was coming alive, spawning warriors from every tree and shadow. The crystalline commander raised its weapon, firing brilliant energy bolts at the nearest movement. But the shots passed harmlessly through the forest canopy. The movement had been nothing more than branches swaying in the wind, manipulated by nearly invisible cords. "Impressive," Sarah murmured, watching the alien leaders' growing confusion. "They still haven't figured out that they're shooting at ghosts." Within minutes, the entire alien squad was effectively neutralized, not through advanced weapons or technology, but through an intimate understanding of the environment and the art of misdirection. Some were trapped in natural pitfalls, others were separated and corralled into dead ends, and a few had simply frozen in place, their systems overwhelmed by contradictory sensor data. Sarah finally stood, removing her ghillie hood as she approached the crystalline commander. The alien's color shifted rapidly between shades of blue and purple, confusion and frustration. "You know," she said conversationally, "there's an old Earth saying, the more complex the system, the easier it is to break. Your problem isn't that your technology isn't advanced enough. It's that it's too advanced." The commander's form pulsed with what might have been indignation. "Impossible. Our sensors can detect quantum fluctuations across light years." And yet, Sarah gestured at the surrounding forest, where more operators were now revealing themselves. "You couldn't detect 50 humans standing right next to you. Because you were looking for technology, for weapons, for energy signatures. But we didn't need any of that. We just needed patience, understanding, and respect for the world around us." She reached down and picked up a handful of soil, letting it filter through her fingers. "This earth, these trees, this fog, they're not obstacles to overcome with technology. They're allies to work with, to learn from. Every plant, every shadow, every natural formation is a potential tool or hiding place. We didn't need to invent invisibility because nature perfected it long before we came along." The crystalline commander's color shifted to a deep, thoughtful purple. You are not what we expected." "No," Sarah agreed. "We rarely are. That's kind of our specialty." She gestured to her troops, who began securing the alien squad. "Now, should we discuss terms? Or would you prefer another demonstration of how humanity fights when we let nature do the heavy lifting?" As if in response, a distant rumble of thunder rolled through the valley, and a light rain began to fall. Sarah didn't bother hiding her smile as the alien commander's sensors began fritzing in the natural interference. Sometimes, she thought, the planet itself seemed to be on humanity's side. The lesson was clear. In their rush to advance beyond their world, the Coalition had forgotten something crucial. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't weapons at all, but the wisdom to use what nature already provides. And humanity, for all its supposed primitive technology, had never forgotten that lesson. Nature's champions. High Admiral Vex Thor's crystalline form dimmed as he reviewed the latest battle reports. Coalition forces had lost contact with ground teams in the Sahara Desert, the Amazon rainforest, the Siberian tundra, and the Australian outback, all within the same planetary rotation. Impossible, Commander Zora hissed, her metallic scales bristling. How can they be defeating us in every environment? The holographic display showed 4 different terrains where Coalition forces had failed. In the desert, an entire mechanized division had vanished into a sandstorm. In the rainforest, their most advanced stealth units had been outmaneuvered by invisible opponents. In the tundra, their thermal tracking systems had been rendered useless. And in the outback, their ground forces had simply disappeared. "Show me the Australian engagement," Vex Thor commanded. The footage flickered to life, showing a Coalition scout team advancing through red desert terrain. Everything seemed normal until the ground itself appeared to swallow 3 of their walker units. The remaining forces scattered, only to be picked off one by attackers they never saw. "Freeze image," Vex Thor ordered. "Enhance Sector 7. The hologram zoomed in on what appeared to be empty brush. Then, almost imperceptibly, a human figure emerged. An aboriginal tracker wearing nothing more sophisticated than traditional ochre body paint and carrying a primitive projectile weapon. These humans, Vex Thor mused, his crystalline structure resonating with a deep hum. They're not one army. They're many, each perfectly adapted to their local environment. A new alert flashed across the display, this time from the Himalayan mountains. "Patch it through," Zora commanded. The voice of Coalition Force Commander Ankh Sul filled the bridge, punctuated by static and what sounded like howling wind. "Under attack. Cannot locate enemy positions. They're using the mountain itself against us." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by footage from Ankh Sul's helmet camera. It showed a group of Sherpa warriors moving across near vertical ice faces as if they were level ground, their movements perfectly synchronized with the brutal environment. Coalition forces, despite their advanced climbing gear and gravitational controls, were being systematically isolated and neutralized. "They've turned their entire planet into a weapon," Zara realized, her metallic scales clicking rapidly in agitation. "Every terrain, every climate, every ecosystem." "No," Vex Thor corrected, his form pulsing with newfound understanding. "They haven't turned their planet into a weapon. They've learned to be part of it." The holographic display shifted again, showing multiple engagements across Earth's varied landscapes. In the African savanna, Maasai warriors were tracking Coalition forces with an accuracy that made their advanced sensor arrays seem primitive. In the Arctic, Inuit hunters were using their intimate knowledge of ice and snow to eliminate alien surveillance systems. In the Andes, indigenous guides were leading Coalition units into natural traps that no technology could detect. "Look at their methods," Vex Thor indicated, his crystalline form reflecting the changing images. "The desert tribes don't fight the sandstorms. They become part of them. The mountain people don't conquer the peaks. They embrace them. The forest dwellers don't clear paths. They flow through existing ones." A new transmission interrupted his analysis. This time, it was video only, showing a Coalition heavy assault unit stranded in the Louisiana Bayou. Local hunters, using nothing more than airboats and an intimate knowledge of the swampland, had completely immobilized a force that could have leveled a small city. "Each human group," Vex Thor continued, his voice resonating with something close to admiration, "has spent generations learning every secret of their environment. They don't need quantum sensors to know where their enemies are. They can read it in broken twigs, disturbed soil, or altered air currents. Commander Zara's scales shifted uneasily. But surely our technology, Vex Thor interrupted, is designed to overcome nature. Theirs is designed to work with it. His form pulsed with intense colors as he accessed another tactical display. Look at this engagement in the Pacific Northwest. The footage showed coalition forces being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be empty forest. Native trackers, moving like ghosts through the undergrowth, were using the dense fog and ancient trees to conceal their movements. Their knowledge of game trails and natural formations had turned the entire forest into a deadly maze for the alien forces. Every environment we thought would hinder them has instead become their ally, Vex Thor observed. We mapped their planet's geography, but missed its soul. These humans, they're not just surviving in these environments. They're extensions of them. A new alert flashed. Coalition forces in the Gobi Desert had gone dark. The last transmission showed Mongolian horsemen emerging from a dust storm, striking with devastating precision before vanishing back into the swirling sands. High Admiral, Zara said quietly, we're losing ground forces faster than we can deploy them. These humans, they're not fighting a conventional war. They're letting their planet do the fighting for them. Vex Thor's crystalline structure resonated with a deep, thoughtful tone. No, Commander. They're not letting the planet fight for them. They've become the planet's nervous system, its eyes, ears, and hands. While we tried to impose our will on their world, they learned to be part of its will. The holographic display continued to update, showing more coalition forces falling to what seemed like the elements themselves. But Vex Thor could now see the truth. Behind every sandstorm was a desert guide who could read the winds. Behind every avalanche was a mountain dweller who knew exactly where the snow was weak. Behind every swamp ambush was a local who had navigated those waters since childhood. We came here thinking we would find primitive creatures waiting to be uplifted, Vex Thor said, his form pulsing with the colors of revelation. Instead, we found beings who had achieved something we never even considered. Perfect harmony with their world. They don't need to advance beyond their planet because they've mastered something far more powerful. They've become one with it. The tables turn. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the underground command center, surrounded by representatives from Earth's various indigenous and military communities. The massive screen before them showed coalition ships repositioning in orbit, their formations growing increasingly defensive. They're learning, she observed, but they're still thinking like machines. Next to her, Elder Kimi of the Maori gestured to a weather pattern forming over the Pacific. The sea winds are changing. A storm comes. Maya smiled. What the coalition saw as a meteorological inconvenience, Earth's defenders saw as an opportunity. General Chen, are your teams in position? Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the comm. All units ready. The Polynesian navigators say this storm will be perfect. For months, humanity had been studying the coalition's weaknesses. Their advanced shields could stop any projectile, their sensors could detect any electronic signature, and their ships could outmaneuver any conventional attack. But they had one critical vulnerability. They relied entirely on their technology. Begin Operation Thunderstrike, Maya commanded. Across the Pacific, dozens of small boats set out into the gathering storm. To coalition sensors, they would appear primitive and harmless. Traditional vessels guided by traditional methods. What the aliens couldn't understand was that these navigators could read the ocean and sky better than any computer. High in the Andes, Quechua shamans who had studied weather patterns passed down through generations gave the signal. In Australia, Aboriginal elders who could sense approaching storms days in advance confirmed their positions. In Africa, tribal weather readers nodded their approval. The storm built rapidly, drawing strength from thermal patterns that Earth's peoples had understood for millennia. Coalition ships, following their protocols, adjusted their positions to compensate for the weather. They never realized they were being herded. They're in position, Sarah reported, moving to Phase 2. Around the globe, Humanity's forces began their coordinated attack. In the Pacific, Polynesian navigators guided their vessels through impossible waves, leading coalition search parties into natural whirlpools. In the Mediterranean, Greek sponge divers who could hold their breath for impossible lengths planted simple disruption devices on the aliens' underwater sensors. Maya watched as the coalition's carefully maintained formation began to break apart. Their ships, for all their advanced technology, couldn't cope with the combined forces of Earth's natural phenomena that humans had studied and worked with for countless generations. Thermal layers are shifting, reported a meteorologist who had grown up reading the Amazon's weather. They're about to lose their atmospheric stability. Right on cue, coalition ships began reporting system malfunctions. Their energy shields, designed to deflect attacks from above, were useless against the planet's natural defenses. Lightning strikes, guided by carefully positioned conductors that indigenous metal workers had crafted, played havoc with their systems. Message from the Himalayas, called out a communications officer. The mountain teams are in position. Maya nodded. Execute avalanche protocol. In the high mountains, generations of knowledge about snow and ice conditions was about to be weaponized. Strategic charges, nothing more sophisticated than carefully placed vibrations, triggered cascading avalanches. Coalition ground forces, which had been pushing into the mountains, suddenly found themselves cut off by walls of snow and ice. Coalition ships are attempting to compensate, reported a tactical officer. They're moving into the upper atmosphere. Exactly as predicted, Maya smiled. Signal the orbital teams. This was humanity's masterstroke. While the coalition had been focused on ground warfare, they had missed humanity's quiet work in space. Thousands of small, non-powered satellites, little more than reflective surfaces, had been positioned using nothing more complex than basic orbital mechanics, knowledge that humans had possessed for centuries. As the coalition ships rose, these satellites caught the sun's light at precisely calculated angles, creating a blinding web of reflected solar energy. The aliens' sensitive optical sensors, designed for the darkness of space, were overwhelmed. Their formation is breaking, Sarah reported with satisfaction. They're losing tactical cohesion. Around the world, humanity pressed its advantage. In the Sahara, desert tribes who could read the dunes like books led coalition ground forces into sandstorms that stripped the coating from their armor. In the Arctic, Inuit hunters who could sense ice thickness by sound alone guided alien patrols onto thin ice. But it wasn't just the environmental warfare that was winning the day. It was the complete inability of the coalition to understand or adapt to Earth's natural rhythms. Their automated systems, programmed to detect and respond to technological threats, were useless against attacks that used nature itself as a weapon. Coalition command ship is requesting communication, announced a liaison officer. Maya exchanged glances with the assembled elders and military leaders. They had agreed on this moment's importance days ago, reading it in everything from tidal patterns to bird migrations. Put them through, she ordered. But first, show them what they're really facing. The command center's main screen shifted to a global view. It showed not military formations or weapon emplacements, but the intricate dance of Earth's natural forces, weather systems, ocean currents, magnetic fields, and countless other phenomena that humans had learned to work with rather than against. High Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form appeared on the screen, its colors subdued. You orchestrated all of this. No, Admiral, Maya replied calmly. We simply learned to listen to our world and work with it. Something your coalition, for all its technological advancement, never understood. The alien leader's form pulsed with what might have been understanding. Your planet, it fights for you. Not for us, corrected Elder Kimmy. With us. There is a difference. Around the globe, coalition forces continued to falter against attacks they couldn't comprehend. Not because they were too primitive, but because they were too detached from the natural world to recognize its power. Maya stepped forward. You have a choice, Admiral. Continue this fight against not just humanity, but against Earth itself, or accept that some worlds cannot, should not, be conquered. A new understanding. The Coalition flagship Eternal Dawn hung in low Earth orbit, its crystalline command deck offering a panoramic view of the planet below. High Admiral Vex Thor stood beside Dr. Maya Patel and General Sarah Chen, his crystalline form reflecting the blue-green marble of Earth. In 10,000 years of Coalition expansion, Vex Thor said, his voice resonating with newfound humility, we have never encountered anything like this. Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance of weather patterns and natural cycles. Hurricane systems swept across oceans, desert winds sculpted dunes, and the planet's magnetic field shimmered with aurora displays. All phenomena that had once seemed like obstacles to the Coalition, but which humans had turned into allies. Your civilization, Vex Thor continued, his form pulsing with curious colors. It appears primitive by our standards. No quantum drives, no neural networks, no antimatter weapons, yet you have achieved something we never even thought to attempt. Maya smiled, watching a massive weather system move across Asia. We stopped trying to conquer nature and learned to dance with it instead. Every indigenous culture, every traditional society, they all understood something your Coalition forgot. True power doesn't come from dominating your environment, but from becoming part of it. The ship's holographic displays showed Coalition forces around the world, not in retreat, but in the process of something far more remarkable: learning. In the Amazon, indigenous guides were teaching alien scientists how to read the forest's countless subtle signs. In the Sahara, Tuareg nomads demonstrated their centuries-old methods of navigating by stars and wind patterns. Your technology isn't primitive at all, Commander Zora observed, her metallic scales shifting thoughtfully. It's just different. While we built machines to overcome nature's challenges, you became living sensors, living computers, living weapons, all by simply understanding and working with your world. Sarah nodded. Every environment on Earth taught us its lessons. The desert taught us patience, the mountains taught us resilience, the forests taught us stealth, and the oceans taught us respect for forces greater than ourselves. A new alert appeared on the ship's displays, but not a warning this time. Around the globe, Coalition scientific teams were reporting unprecedented discoveries. Things their advanced sensors had missed were being revealed through simple observation and generational knowledge. We found signs of 15 new medicinal compounds just by listening to tribal healers, reported one excited Coalition researcher. Their understanding of local plant life exceeds our most advanced biological scanning systems. Another report flowed in from the Arctic. The Inuit hunting techniques we're studying. They're more energy efficient than our best stealth technology. They don't fight the environment. They become part of it. Vex Thor's form pulsed with the colors of revelation. We came to conquer, but instead, we found teachers. Your species hasn't rejected advancement. You've simply found a different path to it. Maya walked to the viewport, gesturing at the living planet below. Earth has been conducting the greatest research and development program in history for billions of years. Every plant, every animal, every ecosystem has evolved solutions to complex problems. We just learned to observe and adapt those solutions. The holographic displays showed more images from around the world. Aboriginal hunters moving invisibly through terrain that Coalition sensors found impenetrable. Sherpa guides navigating paths that alien mapping systems couldn't detect. Pacific Islanders reading ocean patterns that baffled the most advanced computers. The Coalition offers Earth membership, Vex Thor announced, his crystalline form blazing with formal colors. Not as a conquered world, but as equals. Perhaps even as teachers. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Teachers. Yes, Zara interjected, her scales rippling with enthusiasm. Your ways of working with natural systems rather than against them, they could revolutionize our approach to colonization. Instead of terraforming worlds to suit us, we could learn to adapt to them, as you have. Maya exchanged glances with her colleagues. This was more than just a military victory. It was a chance to spread Earth's hard-won wisdom across the galaxy. On one condition, she said. Name it, Vexthor replied. Knowledge flows both ways. We learn from you, you learn from us. Not to change each other, but to understand different paths to advancement. Technology and nature working in harmony, not opposition. The crystalline admiral's form pulsed with agreement colors. The coalition accepts these terms. As if celebrating the accord, the aurora borealis burst into brilliant life above Earth's poles, a reminder of the planet's own majestic power. Coalition ships, once positioned for war, now moved into peaceful observation patterns, their sensors recalibrated to learn rather than dominate. You know, Maya said, watching the lights dance across the atmosphere, there's an old saying on Earth. The more elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. Vexthor's form shimmered questioningly. Sometimes, she explained, the quietest voice carries the most wisdom. Earth has been speaking to us since our species first walked upright. All we had to do was learn to listen. As if in response, a pod of whales breached the ocean surface below, their ancient songs carrying through the ship's sensors. Coalition scientists rushed to analyze the complex patterns, while a group of Polynesian navigators simply smiled, understanding messages that had been passed down through generations. The coalition had arrived expecting to find a primitive world ripe for conquest. Instead, they found humanity, a species that had achieved sophistication not by rising above nature, but by sinking deeper into it. In doing so, they had become something the coalition had never encountered, beings who could turn an entire planet's forces into allies without firing a shot. As the sun rose over Earth's curved horizon, it illuminated not a conquered world, but a teacher of worlds, a living example that true advancement doesn't always mean leaving nature behind. Sometimes, it means finding your way back to it.